And yesterday, another Cleveland guy, Jeff Passan, wrote an article about different teams and their trajectories at the trade deadline. I want to read you what he wrote about the Guardians in specific. I had to paraphrase it a tiny bit so it would fit on the graphic, but here's what Jeff said. The Guardians are adding, but not all in. Maybe Cleveland surprises the industry, acts like a team that's 19 games above 500, and makes a push for AL supremacy. The Guardians find themselves in this place, though, because of their discipline. It's a feature, not a bug. They need starting pitching and should be able to land one or two arms and a bat to complement Stephen Kwan, Jose, and Josh Naylor would also be welcome, but the Guardians aren't nearly as offensive hungry as they've been in the past. With an excellent farm system and controllable core, Cleveland believes this sort of success is sustainable. As much as this incarnation has earned the front office complimenting at the deadline, big-ticket deadline moves to add talent simply aren't in its DNA. So do you guys agree with the premise the Guardians could be adding but not all in at the deadline this year where they currently sit 60-40, 100 games into the season? Is that enough for you, G?
Hey, better. Like, we talked about it. We was tweeting about over our group chat. And obviously the Guardians win yesterday, and that kind of, eases some of your fears a little bit anytime you can get a win. But like Jason said, there's some arms out there that can eat you some innings that are available, that are free and cost you $3-4 million. Talking about the dude that just got cut from the Dodgers, Paxton, and he could cost you $3 million or whatever the case may be. Doesn't need to be some blockbuster deal where they go get a starter that's going to cost you a bunch of prospects. All people in Cleveland are saying is, look, give me a couple of innings eaters and maybe a guy that could possibly, start a game if you had to in the playoffs, if you're up against it, and maybe another rotational bat. That's all you need. But the problem right now is I think his analysis is 50-50. I do believe that it, quote unquote, is not in their DNA. I don't think that they're in it to be giving up all these major prospects like Manzardo or Delauder or any of that. But I will say it's very difficult because there's a lot of teams that are in the race right now, from the Orioles to the Yankees to teams, the Houston Astros are picking up, the Twins. Guess what? Those individuals, they got farm systems that they can offer some pieces and parts too. So Orioles is looking for pitching. Yankees would like some pitching. So it's not like the Guardians are out there by themselves. So there's moves you can make, Earl, but they got to get them done, though.
Yeah, I'm going to let the baseball guy go last. I'm not going to lie, Mike. When I read that graphic, I low-key got disappointed and disgusted. Like, I love the Guardians, but overall, I'm a casual baseball fan. Stop selling me on this, like, passive-aggressive BS. What you mean you all in, but you not all in? Like, when you look at this team and you look at how this team has overachieved to this point this season, and put themselves in the position that they're in, and you don't do anything as an organization to reward the hard work to this point to help them get over the hump, then what type of messages you really sending your fan base? Like, going to get just some arms or just some bat, to me, that's not good enough when you know you can count on 3 people on a consistent basis in your lineup. Stephen Kwan, Jose Ramirez, and Josh Naylor. 2 of those dudes produce 34 to 35% of the RBIs by themselves, right? So outside of those 3 dudes, everybody else is hit or miss, right? You don't know from game to game how productive they're going to be. All I'm saying is that as a fan of this team, right, and when you see this team put forth the effort they put forth, and then I read a reporter telling me that this team is all in, but they're not all in, when everybody clearly has said this is their best opportunity to go win a World Series, man, sometimes like you just got to be more aggressive than what you are. And like, yeah, the Guardians have a great organization. They have a great front office, and they've been that way for a long period of time. But every single time that we get to this point, they put forth this like passive aggressive behavior. It remind me like, man, like of a certain like generation that they so scared of hitting that button to try something new because they've always done things this way. Don't sell me on like, yeah, we in, but we not all in. Either you all in or you ain't. Scared money will never make you money. I don't care what it is.
Here's my issue with all of this. What's your definition of all in?
being as aggressive as you can to get players in here that can be difference makers.
All in is giving up a top prospect, knowing that you're gonna get him for a rental, 1 year, a high price.
I would not do that. I would not give up a top prospect for a 3-month rental. I wouldn't. If that's what you're looking for, I don't think that's smart business.
And just to clarify, Jason, that'd be a CC Sabathia to the Brewers situation where he's an upcoming pending free agent at the end of the season.
Right.
And he'll help you for a stretch run, but the chances of re-signing said player extremely slim. Just to clarify what you mean by that.
Yeah. So and that's where I think, like, when I read things like they're in but they're not all in. Well, what does that mean? Because if they come out of this with a really good reliever, a bat, if they come out of this with 2 or 3 pieces, that's all in to me. Now, it may not be Tarek Skubal. It may not be Mason Miller, although I'd love to see Mason Miller, the A's closer. I'd love to see him in this bullpen. It may not be that. But if you get a bat, an arm, 2 arms, that's all in.
If you address the holes.
And that's why I was a little bit confused. And Jeff Passan does a fantastic job. He's a Cleveland native. Obviously, he's tied to the organization. Like, he knows what he's talking about. But I just think people sometimes get tripped up over some of the verbiage that really doesn't matter. Because I do think the Guardians are going to be aggressive. I do think that they see this as an opportunity to add to something that's really good. And you have to be careful. The Guardians are very good at this. And they're very good at what they say and when they say it and how they say it when they're talking. I can tell you with 100% certainty, they identified Travis Bazzana as their guy a long time ago. But they're not saying that. Even yesterday, Mandy said it was 20 minutes before that they settled on it. No, it wasn't. Like, they had Bazzana on the books long ago, that was the guy they wanted. But by slow playing it the way that they did, they drive his price down and they negotiate. So they're not going to negotiate against themselves and put the word out that they're desperate and they're all, you know what I mean? They're not going to say that they're all in and everyone that comes knocking is asking for Chase DeLauder and Kyle Manzardo and their top prospects. So I would not I wouldn't get too worked up over the verbiage of some of this stuff. And, like, I do think they're going to be aggressive. I do think they're going to make a move. If we show up here next Wednesday, July 31st, after the trade deadline, and they do nothing, have at them. Set them on fire and we'll dance around the fire.
So what Jason just said, that's what triggered me. Because, again, passing to somebody that I know and I respect.
Yeah.
So when you word something like that, like, okay, this dude has credibility to me. So what the hell are you meaning? Are you in or are you all in?
I just wouldn't get tripped up over some of the language on that. I don't think it's beneficial. I do think they'll be active. I do think they're going to add. It may not be, it's not going to be Tarek Skubal. It may not be Garrett. It may not be the headline guy, and maybe that's what he means by that. And again, I said yesterday, the Orioles are going to drive this trade deadline. Everything's going to run through Baltimore because Baltimore has the best prospects, bats of it that are ready to play in the majors right now. So any team that sells, their first call is going to be to Baltimore to see if the Orioles are interested in what they have, and then everything else will funnel out of that. No one's told me that. That's just reading the room. That's just looking at their farm system and saying they're going to control everything in this trade deadline. But they can't get them all. They can't get everybody. And there are good players available. There are more teams that I think are going to be in that Guardians position of this time last year where you look at the standings and the numbers say you have a chance, but then you look at the field and you go, no, that's not it. This is not our team this year. This is not our year. Cleveland made that really difficult choice last year. They pivoted. They sold high on Aaron Savali. It was the right move to make. And this year is the move to go, I'm all in, whatever. They're going to push some chips into the table, and they're going to make some
Here's
moves.
the funny thing
totally
about what Jason just said. The deadline is the 31st, right?
30th.
The 30th. Our first series of August is a home series, 1st through the 3rd, against the Baltimore Orioles. So that's going to be
that team's going to look different than they do
It's going to be really interesting.
What you got, McNuggets?
So if you got, and I'm going to bring this to football to come back to the Guardians, I promise. If you guys watched the HBO Hard Knocks of the Giants front office yet?
I'll watch it on the drive to the Greenbrier.
Yeah.
It's actually, it's way better than the training camp stuff. It's more
when I'm
fascinating.
done with receiver.
But one of the things they talked about and they showed at least what the Giants would allow HBO to show. You got to remember, the Giants have final cut in all this. Was the trade negotiations back and forth, what they were willing to offer for Brian Burns. So they ended up trading a second-round pick and then a later pick for. And they were talking about within their front office, well, if Carolina counters with X, it's too high for us. For this free agent, we think he's worth $7 million. It's going to cost $8.5 to get him. We don't know if he's worth that much. but you see the negotiation process in the room. I would be fascinated, and we'll never actually get a chance to do this, but if when the trade deadline comes and goes, to see who was actually in play for the Guardians, what their price was, who they were/weren't willing to part ways with, who was, okay, this prospect puts the price tag way too high for us as opposed to not, to see kind of how many of these guys, especially the big ticket names, Jason, whether it be a Skubal or Cody Bellinger or whoever, they were actually considering for the right price as opposed to saying, we were never really in on that.
Yeah.
I'd be fascinated to see, and we'll never get it, but
And two trains of thought, like there's the money component to this and there's the prospect component to this. What's it going to cost you financially and what's it going to cost you internally? I'll listen to an argument about this player cost too much in prospects. I'm not going to listen this year to the financial side of it. I laid this out in an article a few weeks ago. They have money to spend. Mm-hmm. They got a lot more in their TV rights deal than, they always knew it wasn't going to be zero. They knew they were going to get, they got like, I think it was close to 90% that they were going to get. Like there is money to spend. And I know like, I've talked about it before, the 4 revenue streams that the league sends to teams in the Guardians position, the league funds a good amount of their payroll just off those 4 revenue streams. And I'm not going to go into it all now because I don't want to mess it up. And I wrote it, if you want to find it, go find it in The Athletic. But there is money out there. So, but if it's a prospect, because I know like they were in on Matt Olson when Oakland, they were in on Sean Murphy, and the A's were asking for Daniel Espino, Gavin Williams, Tanner Bybee, and now you see why they were hesitant to include those names. Having said that, the landscape has changed over the last couple of weeks since Bazana came on. I'm so tired of looking at these 17 middle infield prospects. I'm so tired of looking at these guys.
Where are they going to play?
Like, we have our answer. I think, like, it's Travis Bazana and it's Andres Jimenez. Unless they move Jimenez, unless they've been so disappointed with him offensively, which I don't see that happening because he's so good defensively, you have the answer. So you can take some of these other guys if you don't do it now. And the reason why you would hold for next year is because everything is so inflated. It's like the housing market at 8% interest rates. Everything is so inflated at the trade deadline, and things are a little bit more manageable in the wintertime, which is why they didn't trade Bieber when they did, because I had conversations with people. We don't want to trade Shane Bieber and then have to go look for Shane Bieber at the trade deadline. Well, that's exactly where they are now because he got hurt. You now have to, theoretically, should be going out and looking for a Shane Bieber, but the prices in prospect is so high, it's not even the money component, it's what you're willing to give up. And I get that to an extent, but I'm just tired of looking at these middle infield prospects.
Jason sound like a parent walking in the house. If you don't get rid of some of these damn middle infielders, I don't know.
You're grounded.
You're grounded.
I'm taking your phone away.
Why do I come in here and these middle infielders is in the floor every single time?
You got 17 of them. Get rid of some of these damn middle infielders now.
Hey,
that's right.
I want to ask y'all, like, because this is my fear. Do you think there is a move out there? And y'all can all chime in, because this is just, when I go to sleep and I think about the Guardians, I think about this. Is there a move where if you're in the Orioles organization, you say, you know what? We know the Guardians ain't going to spend no money. We feel like we even with them. We feel we here. But if we get that guy, we just put ourselves over the top. Is there a guy out there? Because it sounds like they got the ammunition and the gumption and the mindset to think, because that organization has been down for a long time.
Yeah, I don't think Baltimore's looking at Cleveland. I think Baltimore's looking at the Yankees. Mm-hmm. It's the divisional opponent. They're trying to win the division. They're neck and neck with the Yankees. Baltimore doesn't care what's going on in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. But the player you're talking about is Tarek Skubal, who just pitched against the Guardians the other night from Detroit. If I'm Detroit, I would trade him, because you're not going to be any good before he's a free agent anyway. You're not going to re-sign him. So, I mean, maximize the value. Right now is peak value for him. I would move him. Now, the Tigers don't have a very good history on these trades. They've missed on pretty much all of them. If you go back and look at any stars they've traded, they never get the right return for them. But that doesn't mean you stop trying. So that's the move for Baltimore. If Baltimore were to get Tarek Skubal after getting Corbin Burns in the offseason, that's a really imposing rotation that they're running out there in a postseason series. So,
even if it's not Skubal, real quick, Flaherty's pitching tonight for the Tigers.
Yeah.
And we got a pitching matchup for – it might be the best pitching matchup in baseball tonight between Flaherty and Bybee. And you look at another guy that Baltimore could hop in on, Jason. I think Flaherty's probably a more realistic target than them trading Skubal, but he's another guy having a terrific season who, if the Guardians can somehow find a way to add, or Baltimore or New York, any team that needs pitching, another guy that's going to be highly coveted on the market.
I think both can be gone because, like, another team that, I think the Dodgers are getting Clayton Kershaw back, but that's a big market team that got a lot of, like, top prospects as well.
Yeah.
And Skubal kind of big name, front runner probably for the AL Cy Young and things like that. I could see a team like the LA Dodgers come calling Detroit and trying to acquire him as well.
It'll be an interesting trade deadline. We've got a week to go, a little under a week to go, and I do think the Guardians will be active, and that's what's most important. They know what they have. They know they have a good team. It's not a great team right now. It's a very good team, and they just need a couple more pieces. But, it's talked about yesterday. The bulk of where this team goes is going to be predicated on the guys who are here. They're not going to overhaul this thing in the next 6 days. They're going to tweak it with a move or two. But ultimately, it's going to come down to the bulk of the guys who are here now. That's going to determine how the season goes.
Yeah.
It's so like the core guys, Gavin Williams is going to have to be strong. Tanner Bybee is going to continue.
I mean,
to
they
be
cannot
strong.
withstand any more pitching injuries.
Yeah, like Jose hit his first home run at 74 at
Jose
bats
gotta
yesterday.
get back.
So, I think you're going to be dependent on the core of your team, and then you add some guys. Like I said, the only thing that triggered me was how it was worded and by, like, who put the words out there.
Yeah, I
This
wouldn't
ain't
get
just
hung up on that.
Yeah, so
I wouldn't get hung up on it.
I think until we see what moves are actually made, it's impossible to determine whether you're all in or not. You know what I mean? Like, to Jason's point, if they get, hypothetically speaking, 2 pitchers in a bat that are all mid-range, but they give up a decent plethora of their farm system to acquire said pieces, you could have 3 quarters instead of a home run, or 3 singles to score a run instead of a solo shot, and try to get the same impact without it being a massive name, quote-unquote, all in. Let's sell the whole farm to get a Skubal or a Flaherty or somebody. Do you think Flaherty would take the whole, not the whole farm, Jason, but obviously not what Skubal would be?
Yeah, he'd be a lot
cost,
less.
But
He'd cost a lot less.
half? Because Skubal, you're selling everything, essentially.
Right, you're selling everything. Flaherty will again, look at what Savali commanded last year. Flaherty would probably cost you 1 top 3 prospect. I mean, I'm just basing that on Savali.
So you saying what? They want
Manzardo.
Okay, that's so who your top 3 that the people would, when they call the Guardians, who they looking for?
Chase DeLauder.
I'm not giving up Chase for nothing.
Chase DeLauder.
Well, then you're not all in.
Yeah, see?
Listen.
That's
No, because
me.
I told G this. I told G this Saturday. I said, for me, Chase, and of course Travis. Outside of that,
You're not all
for
in?
the right player,
See,
for the right player, because I have this vision of, okay, it's been a long time since we had some serious power hitters that we've drafted and developed in all seriousness. The last one was probably Manny Ramirez, right? And so, like, when you talk about that, I can envision 2 years from now, like, Chase and Bazana batting 3 or 4 or something like that. Like, that's crazy power in your lineup. Like, I don't know. Maybe it sounds like I'm not all in, but outside of Chase,
that's
have at it.
That is my daddy. He asked me, what does all in mean? That means when I go look at your roster, I'm like, all right, well, let me get Gavin Williams. Nah.
But who am I getting to return? If I'm getting Skubal,
the Lauder, can I get him? Nah. We
who
don't
am
even
I
want to give
getting?
Kyle. We don't even give Kyle Manzardo up.
I'm just saying, if I'm getting Skubal, that's a different story.
But
it sounds like the Guardians are not getting those tier 1 guys, right?
So
Jason?
Flaherty, right?
They're not getting Skubal.
So Flaherty, right? Or what's the kid's name from the Cubs? Tyone.
Oh, Jameson Tyone.
Jameson Tyone.
What? See, this is the thing about baseball
They GM
trades.
came out and said they're looking towards the future. So whatever move they make is going to be to set them up for the future.
And there is no one set answer to this. I'm not trying to dodge it. There is no one answer,
right.
Because some teams want 1 or 2 premier prospects. That's what they want. Other teams, and the Guardians fall in the second category, they'd like to mix the portfolio. Give me 6 or 7 guys. They may not be the top tier number one prospect, but give me your 3, 7, 9, 11, and 13, and then we're going to see what happens, and we'll see which one of those. That's what they did with Mike Clevenger from the Padres. That's how they do business. They would rather mix the portfolio than just bank everything on one or two guys.
If we walk away at the end of the trade deadline and we only got 5 middle infielders, I will feel a lot better because that means that we made some serious moves out here.
Speaking of a diversified portfolio, I think we're going to switch it up in terms of topics. What we got, McNuggets?